Hello, it's Amy, and I'm back with the Journal of Emily Shore. When we left off last time, Emily had just said her farewells to Bartley Lodge and to the friends that she knew in the area of Bartley and in England, really, in the autumn of 1838 before they leave for Madeira for her health. And it was decided that Emily would go on ahead with her mother and that her father and the rest of the family would follow not long after. So here we are at London on page 283 of the 1891 edition. I never before entered London after day had closed, and was perfectly surprised at the superb effect of the gas lights in every street and shop, the long rows of glittering lamps, and above all the concentrated mass of starry lights seen across the park, which had the effect of enchantment. The coachman was accommodating and agreed to set us down at our destination. It was 6 o'clock when we arrived at 21 Wimpole Street, where we found a fire ready in the drawing-room and all ready comfortably to receive us. I found waiting for me a kind letter from my dearest Mary, containing a little myrtle leaf, which she tells me to keep till we meet again. She talks of the possibility of our meeting in Madeira. We sat down to a snug dinner, and during the evening had a conclave of friends. First came Mr. and Mrs. Keel to wish us adieu. Next, our grave, excellent cousin, Lord Tynesmouth, whom Mamma congratulated on his approaching marriage with a Miss Caroline Brown, said to be a prize both in mind and person. I had a good deal of talk with him about Norway, and he informed me that Inglis's book, which enchanted me so much, is not much to be depended on. Then came in our most kind cousin, Edward Twopenny, and his two friends, with his friend Captain Jones, who, though personally unknown to us, has been our friend during all the Madeira business. He is blunt, downright sailor, all kindness, good temper, and honesty, with a rugged sunburnt face and rough grizzled head. Oh, with what kind friends are we surrounded! I have never been in London at this time of year before, and am disgusted at the fog, smoke, darkness, and most uncleanly atmosphere. November 29th, Thursday. All is for the best, and I am sure this has been most strikingly the case with us, everything, even which we regretted, having afterward turned out for our advantage. As, for instance, this delay of the ship's sailing, which annoyed us at first, has been a productive of the most essential good. Richard breakfasted with Mr. John Shore, and brought us a table of the Portuguese duties on imports in Madeira, which perhaps has half saved us from ruin. They are absolutely immense, inconceivably so. We knew that the duties were high, and that the Portuguese custom house officers are very apt to seize all new articles of British manufacture. But it now appears that the duties themselves are so enormously high as to the amount, in many cases, to prohibition. Every article of every description, without exception, if not used, pays duty. All dresses, for instance, not made up, pay duty, and if they are made up, if they have not been worn, the duty is 4 times the value of the original article. So many encouraging circumstances, and the kindness of so many friends have quite cheered dear Mamma. Her spirits revive, and she feels much happier and more composed, which rejoices me much. December 1st, Saturday. We certainly are rich in friends, even amongst those who know us but little. December 2nd, Sunday. It is now a little after 8, our last evening together, our last evening in England. This time tomorrow we shall have bidden Richard a long farewell. We are all round the table writing, but we cannot help continually alluding to our novel circumstance, and we have all agreed that this last week in Wimpole Street has been a most happy one, especially to Richard, who has seen much more of us than he has done for a long time, and besides has had great amusement in going about London, making calls and seeing sights. We leave him rich in friends. He has kind and warm invitations from Lord Tynesmouth, John Shore, George Shore, Mrs. Ducksworth, Miss Pym, and many others, besides all our relations, so that he will have plenty of homes during his Halesbury holidays. December 3rd, Monday. We were up at 6:30, breakfasted at 7:45, packed up our few remaining things, and were ready when the hackney coach came at 9:15. Captain Jones arrived not long after, and we were all packed in and started for the West India Docks. It was a very fine morning, and our drive through the city was on the whole pleasant enough. There was neither crowd nor impediment, and we were amused by seeing public buildings with which we were unacquainted, such as Christ's Hospital, the India House, Newgate, and others. Our luggage being put into the boat first, we followed, and in 2 minutes were alongside of the vessel. Aboard the David Lyon. David Lyon is the name of the ship. Richard first scrambled up the side of the ship by a rope ladder. Then Mamma and I and Louisa were by turns hoisted up in a kind of chair and swung upon the deck. We were immediately sent into the cabins to be out of the way. However, in course of time, Captain Jones took us all by turns up to the quarter-deck, and I was much amused with seeing the tiller ropes that move the rudder, the binnacle where the compasses are, the coops where the unfortunate ducks and fowls are kept for our benefit, the vegetables suspended on ropes, etc. The air was cool and very refreshing to me, after having tasted none of it for some weeks, except what I could snatch from coach windows. Soon after this we were introduced to the captain, who had just come on board. Captain Jones soon after walked into the dining cabin, where we were sitting, and said, "Mrs. Shore, here is a gentleman who declares he knows you." With these words produced Mr. Barrett. And there is an editor's note here. This gentleman was the father of Mrs. Barrett Browning, who was going as far as Gravesend, and who, as we were before aware, had known, or at least had met, Mamma when she was a girl at Casserton. He shook hands with us most cordially, and very much pleased us with his frank, good-natured countenance. He resembled the portrait of Porson, and we all stared when Captain Jones said, "Now, would you believe it, he has the assurance to tell me the other day that he has turned 50. In fact, he looked little more than 30. We heard that we were near Gravesend, and that the temporary passengers must immediately prepare to enter a boat. This was the summons to part with dear, dear Richard, and it was a very bitter parting. I will hurry over it. I have nothing to mention but floods of tears, a few broken expressions of heartfelt grief, and at last long, earnest gaze through the stern windows, following the boat to shore, till it was lost among the shipping. We did not sit down to indulge our grief, but proceeded to divert our thoughts by occupation. I must not forget our parting with our kind, excellent, valuable friend, Captain Jones, who has really been to us like a brother, so that we felt comparatively friendless when we had lost him too. He called hastily for Richard, then walked up to us, and finding us drowned in tears, he made the parting as short as possible. He shook hands warmly with us. Mamma attempted to express her gratitude to him. "God bless you, ma'am," he said. "God's with you, be sure." And so he hurried away. I had observed about the ship and at dinner a seaman-like man, who I concluded to be the mate, and to whose appearance I took an exceeding aversion. He has a small, active figure, which on deck is always darting agilely about, but in the cabin has a sort of angry, erect stiffness, varied by an occasional fierce, short movement of the head, when giving an order or seeking for anything. His face is thin, and of that scarlet look which so speakingly indicates an addiction to spirituous liquors. Everything in his face, which has almost the expression of a demon, tells of a temper the most furious and passionate that can be imagined. I never saw so horrible a countenance. It was revolting, and yet, with a common inconsistency, I could not help continually looking at him, while he sat opposite me at tea, bolt upright, stiff, and silent. His small, quick bloodshot grey eyes rolled about continually, their whites glaring hideously amid the crimson of his face. His sharp features, close-curled hair, short red whiskers, and firm compressed mouth, whose thin lips, when he is busy on deck, seemed constantly opened to emit fury, and ever quivering with suppressed or muttered rage, all formed a picture truly terrible to behold. I thought he must be a most unhappy as well as fierce-tempered man. We retired to our cabins at about 9:30, watched as we undressed the brigs and schooners that floated past our stern windows, their white sails gleaming in the moonlight, listened to the rush of waters whenever a steamer hurried by, and at last scrambled into our cots and fell asleep amidst a silence so great that we could almost fancy ourselves in the depths of our beloved forest. And so ends our first day on board the David Lyon. And we'll leave it at that for today before they begin their journey on the David Lyon. We are on page 288, beginning December of 1838.